when they went to the Queen to tell her her subjects had no bread. Do you know what she said?
Let them eat cake.
Who took the bomb?
We're getting screwed, man. Every time we turn around, we're getting screwed. Oh, the revolution's going to be through podcasting for sure. That's the only way we talk. It's the little guys that take the brunt of everything. It's got to stop. Peasants, man. We're just peasants. Every one of us. You watch those old movies, you see the peasants in the background with the kings and queens walking around. We're those people. We're those people. Good morning, peasants. Welcome to another episode of The Peasant's Perspective. I am so glad to be back, Ron.
Right on.
We missed an episode on Friday. We had planned on doing one, but I had to go from Seattle back to Boise to get all the stuff that had been packed up, which was basically like all of my personal stuff and then half of my house because my family had planned on moving last year. And anyways, I left my phone at home.
Oh, that's what. Well, it's for the best.
So I went for a little trip without a phone. And you know what? It was nice. It was nice. For 14 months, I didn't have a cell phone. And so to just not have it again, it didn't really hold me up too much. It wasn't too bad. Like, great. Hey, can you call my wife and tell her we're on the road?
Unplugged from tech. Every once in a while is
totally.
okay.
Anyways, but some great things happened this weekend. So we're going to jump into the big news that happened last night. So if you watching on the screen here, you can see there's this auto pen scandal that kind of broke out with Joe Biden, right? And how he was just using the auto pen to sign all the executive orders, and most specifically the pardons. Now, the pardons that he signed these executive orders for were preemptive. Yeah. So there's no named crime except for Hunter's.
Well, yeah, but it was for past and future crimes.
Yeah, but look at this here. So in this little video, it's a silent video, but it's showing the 4 signatures: the Biden family pardon, the J6 committee pardon, the Dr. Fauci pardon, the General Milley pardon, and the Lundofgren pardon.
Looks like they were all signed with a PDF signature.
They were. Yep,
yeah.
auto pen. So this led to kind of a, what should we do? Is it even valid? And I've expressed the opinion that you're just never going to reverse it. They use an auto pen as long as they acknowledge it post fact. It's kind of like a done deal. It was the intent. Okay. Well, there's been question if Biden even intended that. Right. So this is coming from Donald Trump last night on Truth Social said this: the quote pardons that Sleepy Joe gave to the unselected committee of political thugs and many others are hereby declared void, vacant, and of no further force or effect. Your eyes just went way up, Ron.
Yeah.
I know, right? Like, wowie, wowie, wowie. Because of the fact that they were done by auto pen. In other words, Joe Biden did not sign them. But more importantly, he did not know anything about them. The necessary pardoning documents were not explained to or approved by Biden. He knew nothing about them. And the people that did may have committed a crime. Therefore, those on the unselected committee who destroyed and deleted all evidence obtained during their 2-year witch hunt of me and many other innocent people, I'm included in that list, should fully understand that they are subject to investigation at the highest level. The fact is, they were probably responsible for documents that were signed on their behalf without the knowledge or consent of the worst president in the history of our country, crooked Joe Biden.
Yeah.
First impressions?
First impression was like, I can't believe this is being sent out in a text. Is this like an official thing now?
This is how Donald Trump operates. This is the transparency. Firing people over Twitter, putting stuff like this out, because what it does is it immediately engages the public so it can't be reversed.
Sure.
This is the statement and intent of the executor of the United States of America, and everybody better get in line because the whole world is now going to hold his cabinet secretaries responsible. This wasn't just a cabinet decision, and then there was resistance, and things get dragged out for a few months until finally they're like, well, we're trying to do something.
Sure.
This is like, it's done.
Can't the text be fake just like an auto pen signature?
This text?
Yeah.
Well, sure, but Donald Trump's still alive, so he'd probably get in front of it right now.
Okay.
Right? And if Joe Biden came out and said, no, I was fully briefed, blah, 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 sure. But my guess, and history has tended to prove this out, is Donald Trump, when he says things like he did not know anything about them, There's no briefing. There's no thing in the schedule. There's no evidence that he was ever explained anything. There's no evidence that he ever asked for paperwork to sign for those people to be pardoned.
Recall when he was pressed about the gas deal that he shut down and didn't realize.
Know. Exactly. See, this is the themes that we explore as we go through this, right? It's like, hey, by your fruits ye shall know them. He doesn't know what he's signing. He didn't know the impact of it. He suspended liquid natural gas exports under the guise that he was commissioning a study.
Right.
But, we're suspending exports while we study it. He didn't know that we're suspending exports while we study it.
Right.
Right. And so he's like, I didn't know that. I just tanked the United States economy because I wasn't paying attention. I wasn't told. I didn't read the documents. This is not a small thing.
Right.
Just not selling the world liquid natural gas means they're buying it from our enemies. Like, oopsie. Are we the baddies, Ron? Like, what's going on here? So obviously, myself being a recipient of a presidential pardon, my pardon was done on live TV in front of the whole world. We watched the pin. I could hear it. The Sharpie marker. So it's a done deal. Okay, folks? It ain't being reversed. In fact, I'm going to frame that pardon here on the wall here pretty soon. So I find this absolutely fascinating. I did not expect this. I didn't think they would go this route. I thought they would honor these pardons, and it would be definitely something where it would allow the narrative to move on and just put all the blame on these people, but no punishment. Right. Which is kind of the MO, but at least now we're blaming them. We just can't punish them.
Right.
See, before we wouldn't even blame them to avoid the punishment. Okay, well, they found a loophole, pardon them, and then the narrative can move on. But now,
It does seem pretty sketchy, though, that you pardon somebody for no crime. I mean, what is that about?
Again, there's no named crime, so what are we not investigating, right? I mean, again, these are kind of like there's never been preemptive pardons until Nixon. They preemptively pardoned him because they were going to clearly start investigating. So it was like, we're just going to pardon him. And that was upheld. There was a question as to whether that was legal or not, but no one was going to prosecute. We're moving on, close that chapter, right? And that was really, in my opinion, a deep state takeout of Nixon, which someday maybe we'll deep dive on it. But that happened, and the pardon just kind of stood, but there's never really been another one like that since until now. And now it's going to be challenged. Okay, so keep this theme in mind. I look at this as this is now like, okay, we want accountability. We elected Trump to give accountability. And a lot of this accountability is like holding the bureaucracy accountable. Hey, Department of Education, you're not getting results. We're cutting you. Hey, these 7 agencies that got deleted last week, which were just kind of 7 agencies you and I have never really heard of, they all got completely eliminated last week. So they are downsizing the government. There's clearly that's happening.
Yeah.
Okay. So I like that. Great. Some accountability. Yeah. We found out about all these USAID things. We found out more about the election stuff in 2020 and 2016 and 2024. And all the things that they did there. Like, we're finding out, or confirming, I should say more accurately, all these things. The whole COVID narrative, it started in the Wuhan lab. They knew about that. All these different things. And there's just been no accountability.
Yeah.
None. I mean, other than the political accountability that, hey, Trump's back in office, like at least that ship got righted. But other than that, we're waiting for Pam Bondi to just do something. Well, this right here, taking away their pardons, that's like shots fired. We're coming. I mean, to me, that is like, we had a truce, flags are down. We're now advancing. Yeah, you will be investigated at the highest levels. What they're saying is, we know what you did. Something's going to happen. I mean, that's how I feel about it. All right. So with this theme, a lot of people are starting to wake up and realize what you and I have been saying for half decade now, that they're recognizing the Hegelian dialect and how the parties, plural, have left the bell curve of the mainstream of America.
Yeah.
Right. And so we're seeing it pop up all over the place. And slowly but surely, people are starting to recognize that MAGA is really very 80% issue. Right. And as people get past the red hat neo-Nazi slurs, they're starting to recognize, oh, this aligns with things I believe. Yeah. So this right here, I need to remember her name.
And our lives aren't just slogans.
Yeah. Batya Unger Sargon. So she was on the Bill Maher show, and we're going to listen to 2 little clips here, but she explains perfectly her position. And I think this describes at least myself, right? Because I've admitted this shamefully. I voted for Barack Obama twice, although I'd be just as ashamed if I'd have voted for the other guy too, Romney or McCain, right? But either way, like, I was ashamed, but I made choices. I saw the Hegelian dialectic. So one of the things I always point out is the value of life.
Let's be honest. America was in a no-win situation.
We were in a no-win situation. But here's why. So I value life. Okay. Life is a value above all. I think life should be preserved. I choose that. Okay. So being that that's one of my core values, that everything kind of starts out with life, then follows liberty, then follows pursuit of happiness. Okay. So I want to preserve life. So I view a unborn child as a child that's just not born yet, but is part of the plan and is being created. Okay?
It's on the way.
Yeah, just because the cake is still baking doesn't mean it's not a cake. Okay, so I am anti abortion as a method of birth control. Okay, I am pro life. I want to live in a world where if you're making a choice between the mother and the baby, you can make that choice, and we all understand. So we have the tools available, but people do not choose to use it as a form of birth control. Got it?
Yeah.
We affirmatively plan our families, and we love that. Awesome. That's my core value. But then I also value you, Ron, because you're already a formed adult and alive. So I also think I should preserve your life with just as much, gusto.
Thank you.
So I don't really like to just go to another country and fight a war for nothing, right? So I also don't want to fight arbitrary wars because basically I support life.
Okay.
Well, historically, the last, couple generation, to be anti-war, you would go join the Democrat Party. And then you were pigeonholed into being pro-choice, to use abortion to kill another soul, right? For birth control purposes. So I now have to support murder and death in order to support the life of my brothers and sisters that are my age, or whatever, however you want to phrase that.
Pro-death, anti-war.
If I'm anti-killing unborn babies, then I'm going to join the Republican Party. But then I have to compromise because they have historically been very war hawkish and absolutely okay killing brothers and sisters over oil resources or whatever the case is. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
So you're splitting the issue of life. So no matter what you choose, I choose life, you justify it. Again, I understand your value for life. You and I as peasants can recognize that. And in our day-to-day activities, we'll be able to probably come to an agreement that we should both support unborn children and living people. Okay. But you might value the living people 1 degree more than the unborn child. And therefore you picked one party and I picked another. And now we're split on all these issues that we shouldn't be, which then falls into the next issue that you might have that they split as well. Right. I mean, every issue, they take it, the 80%, and they split it down the middle and they get people divided. And what Donald Trump's done is he's come in and says, no. We're going to be pro-life. So we're anti-war and anti-abortion for birth control purposes.
Crazy position.
Oh, my gosh. So we're just going to support life. And where does that leave the old school Republicans that are committed to being powerful and the Democrats who committed to being powerful? And they did that by splitting every issue. Uniparty split the issue. They're still going to control population through abortion and war. And yet we're going to be sitting over here thinking that we're supporting life while at the same time we're funding the exact opposite of what we want.
Well, maybe we should just line all the politicians up on the fence, when you're getting ready to play a baseball game, and just start picking them out like, hey, you're for life, you're over here. You're for death, you're over there.
Yeah. Okay, so she's talking to Bill Maher about how she's still a Democrat and liberal or whatever, but she's a MAGA Democrat. So listen to this. Or liberal.
Just a conservative, leaning right to a Trump supporter. Okay, someplace I would never go. And it is not ever going to be that young.
Some horrible audio.
And I'm just wondering.
I think she just moved away from her mic or something.
We're approaching 2 months in. I mean, you must have a feeling in your gut. Look me in the eye and tell me you don't. that this is really going badly and I shouldn't have thrown my lot in with this team?
Oh, no, I feel the opposite.
All right. Tell me why.
I'm so sorry, Bill.
No, tell me why.
No, I feel so proud of, I mean, I was never a Republican or a conservative. I was a leftist, and I am still a leftist. I'm just a MAGA leftist now because...
That makes no sense. I please do. Yes, please.
When I look at what President Trump ran on and the agenda that he's enacting right now, he took a Republican Party that was built on social conservatism, foreign interventions and wars, and free trade and free markets. And he basically took an axe to all of those. During the campaign, he said, look, I mean, he's pretty pro-gay. That's pretty obvious. He appointed the highest-ranking out gay person, Scott Bessent, our Secretary of Treasury, which is incredible. And he sidelined the pro-life wing of his party.
He has changed the party, for sure.
Okay, so he believes abortion should be legal for 12 weeks.
But free trade,
On foreign intervention, he's anti-war. He's trying to bring
Yes.
to an end to all of these wars, okay?
By surrendering, but yes.
Okay.
I mean, that is one way to end the war.
Which is basically all Democrats wanted Barack Obama to do in Iraq.
He's on the other side of another party that is quite pro-war and wants to keep the war going, right?
But
so
let's- but
so
what
let me just
about
get to
these-
the third point. And the third point is, and he's not free trade. He does not believe in free trade. He looked at our destroyed manufacturing base. He looked at the downwardly mobile working class. He looked at the fact that working class Americans can no longer afford the American dream. And he looked at why that was, which was there was a handshake agreement between both parties that we should somehow have free trade, which resulted in shipping 5 million good manufacturing jobs overseas to build up China and Mexico.
And some came here.
No, what they did was they brought in millions and millions of illegal migrants to compete with the jobs that remained here. And what Donald Trump said was, we have to stop selling out the working class. That agenda that he laid out, socially moderate, anti-war, and anti-free trade
And this-
protectionist, that is a leftist
Sam, I will
agenda.
bring you in, I swear to
appreciate
God.
that.
Did you hear that? That is a leftist agenda.
Huh.
Okay. So again, if you're a American worker, right, you would typically be union affiliated or something like that, and you would vote for pro-labor policies, which the Democrat Party has always lauded. But now the Republican Party, the MAGA Party, has become the party of the worker, the blue-collar worker, the union guy, right? They've made this complete shift. So guys like Bill Maher are like, well, you could stop a war by surrendering. Bill Maher, rewind 15 years, right? Bill Maher, rewind 15 years. Well, we brought jobs back. Bill Maher, are you really a free trader? I'm pretty sure you were all about like protectionism and union workers and stuff like that. But then all of a sudden you're like, well, I mean, some jobs came back. She's like, no, they didn't.
Yeah.
This is great. People like this in 2016 didn't see what MAGA was. It was just the deplorables, the flyover people, right? The people that are out in the hinterlands. Well, now you see the inner city people are like, hey, these opportunity zones. Hey, First Step Act. It's affecting it's helping our communities. Hey, we're being empowered. Manufacturing jobs are coming back. These little factories that would get stood up to do small things might employ 100 people. That's not a lot. But you know how big a deal 100 factory jobs is in a town with 15 or 20,000 people?
It's the whole town.
It's the whole town, because that job then creates enough need to have the grocery store, which creates a couple more jobs, which then creates a large enough labor pool to have another thing. And you know what I mean?
Yeah.
In college, when I was studying political science, we followed a dollar one time. Okay?
Oh, no.
We followed a dollar. So we're in Rexburg, Idaho, little town, eastern Idaho, and it's on the way to Yellowstone. Okay. So everybody who's going to Yellowstone coming from the south of Yellowstone is eventually going to drive by Rexburg. And there's 2 exits, and off those exits, there's nothing, right? You have to go into town to get to gas station or a restaurant or anything. And it's not a big diversion. Like, it's only a couple minutes, but it's not right there on the side of the interstate.
Right.
So the city said, we want to put in, on the first exit, we want to put services to draw people off. Because if you're heading into Rexburg for college purposes, you'll make the trip and spend your money in college. But if you're heading to Yellowstone, you're going to keep driving to the next town where there are services 10 miles up the road. So they zoned it, and they put in, like, when I was there, they ended up, the first thing that opened up was an Applebee's.
So this one would pull in some of that drive-by cheddar.
Yes, pull in the drive-by economy. So they put in an Applebee's. Okay. So we followed $1 off the interstate into the Applebee's, right? Goes into a tip. The waiter then goes home and spends the money in a vending machine. Then the guy with the little vending machine business grabs that $1, and then he goes and gives it to the vendor. The vendor pays another employee, right? The vendor that does the delivery to the machines, and then it plays it to an employee. That employee then goes back to the Applebee's for a Friday night dinner, right? Who gives it to another tip? Who then goes to she goes into the drive-in theater, and then it was like that $1 that came off the interstate got spent 28 times before it got back on the interstate and made its way back to Yellowstone, right? So we were able to say that $1 coming off the interstate then created $28 of GDP for the city. So imagine that, right? $10 comes in, that's $280. $1,000 comes in, that's $28,000. All of a sudden, you can increase your GDP by opening up simply an Applebee's. Imagine when the Chevron gas station gets there, and you know what I'm saying? So that's why when you drive down the interstate, there's some really high value land right there, because you got that drive-by economy, and you want to pull dollars off of it. Mm-hmm. Right. Sitting in studio with us, not on mic, is a dear friend of mine who once told me dollars follow value. And the biggest thing in life is just, money is currency. It's flowing like a river. You just got to get it in the way of the money. Mm-hmm. Right. So you've got the interstate, these asphalt rivers with currency, dollars floating up and down them. And you just want to create a little eddy for it to stop and pool up. And
literally and figuratively.
Yes. Right. Donald Trump understands this, and he understands that flow from the bottom up, right? The Democrats just don't. They're like, oh, we'll just top down feed it. We're not going to build the Applebee's as an investment.
We'll just print money.
We'll just throw a grant. What do you guys need this year? $1 million? Well, I can get $1 million by allowing the Applebee's, build the Applebee's for $1 million, and then I turn around and make $28 million in my local economy every year. The Democrats don't see it that way. They just want to dump $1 million, and then next year, another $1 million. So you never grow your economy. You just make up for the exact void.
This is another lesson for the same old story, teach a man to fish or give a man to fish. When you teach a man to fish, you're creating more opportunities.
Yes.
He can build more value himself.
That's right. So she goes on to say this. One second here. She goes on to say this.
Know everything.
Everywhere the Democrats were in charge, old people died of loneliness and despair because they were not allowed to see their family members. Disabled children regressed 2-3 years. Can you imagine having a severely autistic child? You worked so hard to get them to a certain place, and they shut their school. Kids had no one to report abuse to because they were not seeing their mandated reporters. Poor kids whose one good meal a day is in school did not get that meal. Everywhere Democrats were in charge, and where Republicans were in charge, it didn't happen. And there's been no reckoning. Nobody has.
I don't want to get.
It was
so rubber hitting the road. Bill Maher lives in an altruistic world. He doesn't have little children. He doesn't do the school thing, right? Every outcome she mentioned there, people dying, people being lonely, regressing children, things not advancing. All of those things were clarion calls of the bleeding heart liberals who were like, we need better outcomes. So let's throw money at it. Let's throw resources at it. Let's do this. All these different things.
Did you notice how much he was pushing back when he didn't like this conversation? And you also notice that the other guy is sitting in the seat is getting really uncomfortable.
Yes.
He's moving around
because
like,
they
I don't
know
like
that
this.
those are the outcomes they wanted, but their policies that they were implementing to attain those things in 2020 got amplified to the end of their cycle, right? Full control, not a little control, full control, right? And at that point, it busted them because they realized our policies, when you play them all the way out, and all that COVID did was allowed them to do mass homeschool, mass internet, you know what I mean? Like everything that they would have done anyways, given them another 10 or 15 years.
Sure. But when she just points this out, just very simply, they get very uncomfortable.
Yes, very no
uncomfortable.
Outcomes. Again, people recognize this. Liberals are seeing this. If they are awake and being given the right information, they're seeing it. Here's Sink Junger. Sink Junger's from the Young Turks. He's a far left. He's not really a far leftist. A couple years ago, we would have said he was a super far leftist because that's where his associations are. And he's outside of even the mainstream left news. He criticizes the left for not being left enough. But remember, he shares American values with us. This is one of the things that we're recognizing in the political environment right now. It's no longer left and right. It's being controlled or being free. It's top down. It's bottom up. It's a vertical issue here. And so listen to how he describes the shift in things and his position on stuff. Because again, Donald Trump has taken the entire bell curve, the middle half, 80% of every issue, all the common sense that used to get split, he's absorbed it. And as people that fall in that bell curve are starting to realize their party leaders are on their extremes, right? And in Senk's case, he's saying the extreme it's the circle. As you go too far to the left or right, you actually loop back around and meet in the middle. He's saying my party's gone so far left, they've become capitalist. And the Republicans are saying our party's gone so far right, we've been communist collectivists, right? And they've met back. We want to control the economy. He sees it.
I used to be a Republican growing up. Then I realized they're full of crap, never do anything that they promise. Oh, balanced budgets. When's the last time you guys balanced the
All right, we are going to refresh that. We do run into this. We run like a live videos here. And so sometimes they need to be refreshed before I play them. So I apologize for those little hiccups. Folks, I promise you, if everybody subscribes, we'll make enough money we can dedicate time to
they're full of crap.
These clips. So don't forget to visit peasantsperspective.com, find a little donate
The quality
button.
is your fault.
Yeah, the quality is your fault, listener. If you would just pay us more money, we'd have better quality. I'm just teasing. We own it. We're low budget here. Okay.
a Republican growing up. Then I realized they're full of crap, never do anything that they promise. Oh, balanced budgets. When's the last time you guys balanced the budget? Dwight Eisenhower. Okay, yeah, I got it. Tax cuts for the rich. I got it. So I left the party, and did all the Republicans hate me? They were like, oh, no, come back anytime. Okay. The Democrats. Did I leave the Democratic Party? No. I ran for Congress as a Democrat. I ran for president in a primary as a Democrat. Democrats said, we don't want to be associated with you because that was literally in court, because you're running against beloved Biden and you're a traitor. But wait, I'm in the Democratic Party. I'm running as a Democrat. How dare you? Wait, what? Okay. And then after the election, hey, listen, that's amazing. MAGA seems to be saying that they agree with us on cutting the Pentagon. Nazi. What? Didn't we want to cut the Pentagon? Yeah, but if you work with the other side at all, even if they're doing the thing that we want, Nazi. Well, guys, you're going to drive everyone away.
For real.
We want to cut the Pentagon, but don't let Trump do it.
It would seem like a good idea at first.
Okay, remember, never let a good crisis go to waste. So the crisis in America is overspending. So the Democrats want to control the spending. So they want you to give them control over the Pentagon. But what are the results that they're going to do? So we gave them control. We elected Barack Obama.
Yeah, they wanted to control your spending.
We've given them control multiple times. We've given both sides of the Uniparty control multiple times, and they don't fix any of the problems.
Yeah.
So the Republicans are like, we need to hone down the Pentagon and focus our spending on places where we get results. And the Democrats are like, we need to cut spending at the Pentagon because result is cut spending at the Pentagon, right?
Yeah, I mean, remember when Obama had the Senate and the House? I mean,
yeah, it's not like they didn't have these opportunities.
Yeah.
But this is what I'm saying is people slowly but surely are starting to kind of wake up to this. Right? They're starting to wake up to it. Here's Harriet Hagman in Wyoming talking about chipping, doing electronic chipping on cattle. Do you know anything about this?
no.
Okay, so they've used Department of Agriculture, whatever department manages livestock and agriculture, wants farmers to do RFID chips in their ears. Okay. So listen to how Harriet describes what they're actually trying to accomplish with this, what they're selling you versus what they're actually going to do.
So I come from, as I said, a ranching community. I grew up on a ranch. The USDA for several years has been trying to force our cattle and bison producers to use what are called RFID or EID ear tags, electronic identification ear tags. They want to chip them all. And I've been fighting against this. And they say it's for disease traceability. If there's a brucellosis outbreak or hoof and mouth disease, we've got to know that immediately so we can isolate that animal. And et cetera. We have the very best disease traceability program anywhere in the world in the United States. It's worked beautifully for hundreds of years. It's extremely effective. We're able to isolate animals immediately if there's an issue, despite the fact, and in addition to which we have the healthiest herds of anywhere in the world. So you look at all of that, and so you think, okay, what is this really about? And then you start looking at the countries that have implemented this. Ireland implemented it in early 2022. By August of 23, they were issuing an order that they had to slaughter 41,000 head of cattle, not because of a disease outbreak, but because of global warming. In the Netherlands, Denmark, they adopted an EID mandate, and last year they imposed a $100 a head tax on every single head of cattle in the country, not because of a disease outbreak, because of global warming. So what you start seeing is how they use this information. This is a $1.2 to $1.9 billion tax on the cattle industry if it's actually implemented 100%.
So they're going to have to pay for the tags, and then they're going to use the tags to be able to identify cattle that are sick to cull them. But what they're doing is one little cattle gets now the government is telling the ranchers what cattle to cull instead of the ranchers who know their cattle, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But again, RFID, it's going to be great because we'll be able to get right in front of the sickness. But what's the result? Less cattle, slaughter. Right. And remember a couple episodes ago, we mentioned the guy wants to genetically modify people to be allergic to meat. Remember, this is the globalist agenda. They support that veganist, vegetarian lifestyle. Okay. Now, that might be for you or it might not. Okay. But again, they're using these tools. No matter if you go left or right, you end up with a control problem. And I've said it 1,000 times, and I've said it for a half decade now on this show. I don't care if the boot's coming from the left or from the right. It's still a boot on my neck. I'm opposed to boots on my neck. I don't think you should have the right to put that boot on my neck. Right. And that's where we're seeing this. We want a cohesive society. We want good education. We want good labor laws and support labor. We want free trade, whatever that means. We think it sounds great. Maybe fair trade, whatever. Right. We want all these altruistic values, but how we get there matters. Because if we're getting there in a way that ends in giving our power to others to then dictate back to us, eventually the boot will be on your neck. It doesn't matter if they're trying to put you in prison because of political dissent. It doesn't matter if they're a rancher and they're trying to kill your herd, which will put you out of business. It doesn't matter if you're a small business owner and they're trying to tax and regulate you to death. It doesn't matter if you're just a Domino's franchise and a cheese pizza has a different regulatory body than a pepperoni pizza.
And party affiliation absolutely won't matter.
It will not matter. They will not. They have not shown that they will come and save you, either party.
No.
Just like Sink said, the Republicans were stupid and the Democrats proved to be just as stupid. Okay. So we, the peasants, have to keep them in check. This is a great time right now. This is from Michael Schellenberger. The former head of the UK's Foreign Intelligence Agency, MI6, told Boris Johnson in early 2020 that COVID virus escaped from the Wuhan lab. That means the UK, US, Chinese, and German governments all knew the truth, covered it up, and spread disinformation. Case closed. This is COVID-19 second briefing, etiology and implications, a security briefing, Professor Gwyneth Prinz and Richard Dearlove, with input from Carl Bell, Dr. Constable, Professor English Douglas, and Bigger Sorensen. Did any of those names pop out to you? One of them should have.
Geez, I wasn't really listening.
Okay. Well, it is now beyond reasonable doubt that COVID-19 was engineered in Wuhan Institute of Biology. Success in vaccine design unlikely. Anyways, it escaped from the lab, and they knew it.
Yeah.
They knew it. There are still pundits out there that won't accept this because for 4 years, they pounded into our head that it didn't come from the lab. Why? Because we know that we funded the lab.
So where are those people?
The French lost control of the lab. They built it for the Chinese and they were supposed to run it, and then the Chinese kicked them out. Right? I mean, the whole thing is a giant mess. We funded this thing. We started this thing. We covered up where it came from. We sent the world chasing, on a wild goose chase, trying to figure this out.
Yeah,
and
looking
the
for bats in
implications of it.
caves.
We tried to use the outbreak as justification for why we were creating the virus in the first place, that it would randomly mutate and show up in a wet market. And guess what? That's not how that stuff works. They advanced evolution thousands of years with that virus.
Yeah, in a blink.
In a blink. And then we were not prepared to follow with the adaptation.
Shoot.
Thus implementing the need for the vaccine when it turns out they were one and the same thing. And they knew this. They knew this, right? So this whole thing, the government lies to us. Gosh, go figure. But yet we've convinced ourselves that they wouldn't, because we are the government, right? So we don't want to believe that we created something that then turns around and lies to us. It's no different than a parent who has that child that steals from the parent, steals from the neighbor, is rambunctious, but that parent just cannot see it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's not my kid's not the problem. My kid's not the bully. That's kind of what we've become to our own government, is we just don't believe that, well, we wouldn't allow that. I mean, we don't support fraud, so why would the government? Oh, hello? Do you understand the nature of the world? This is the jungle. You've allowed them to operate in the jungle, and their job is to shield us from it. But what happens is might makes right. And they got all the money and they got all the guns. So there's been no accountability. To the point, this is a little sketch, but this describes exactly how the USAID scandal works and how it goes down. So we're going to watch this, and then we're going to look at some of this USAID and DOE stuff.
All right.
You know, I don't really understand this whole USAID or USAID thing.
Oh, it can be difficult. But luckily for you, I can explain it.
Okay.
See here, you're what's called a taxpayer, and I am the government.
Okay.
May I have some tax money, please?
Sure.
Great.
Here you are.
This is the price you pay for a civilized society. So you give that $20 to me, the government. This is an NGO.
Okay.
A non-government organization. And this is an American small business.
Okay.
Okay, now out of that $20 you give to me, $10 I need to keep because you got to keep the lights on.
Sure.
And $10 goes to the NGO.
Okay.
This one's called Rochambeau for World Peace. You see that small business owner right there?
Yes.
I'm going to need you to mostly peacefully kick him in the balls. You want that money?
Yeah.
Get a kick it.
All right.
But why don't I get anything?
You don't get anything. Very good. You see him right there?
Yeah.
Yeah, take that money from him. Excellent. Thank you for your taxes. Your contributions are well noted. May I?
Yeah.
Thank you. That's called a kickback. Now, this mouthy little terrorist over here that doesn't understand that free speech has limitations,
Yeah.
What?
he needs a kick in the nuts.
No,
Get a
I don't
kicking?
think that's...
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Now, you see,
I heard it shatter.
if the government did that, that would be unethical, maybe even illegal.
Why?
But a non-government organization can kick as many Americans in the nuts as they want. And the best part is, the Americans will pay for it. Do you like getting kicked in the nuts, friend?
No.
Would you like it to stop?
Yes.
I'm going to need some more money, please.
I don't have more money.
Oh, he doesn't have more money. This is called an audit.
What? No. Oh, God.
Oh,
Oh, God.
oh, that looks painful. That's okay. Yep. He's going to have to pick himself up by the bootstraps. 40% of Somalia's GDP is our money that we give to them. So, do you care about the Somalians, good sir?
Oh, of course.
Yeah, have some more money, please.
Oh, I think you guys already, so the NGO took all of it.
You know what that means. He needs an audit.
Please.
And this is how your government and non-government organizations make the world a better place. I'm going to need that money in the form of a donation. Thank you very much. See? Everybody's happy.
What a bunch of silliness. The more you doge.
The more you doge. But that's the breakdown of how it works. Okay? Doesn't matter if the boot's coming from the next right. It's still a boot on my face. Doesn't matter if it's an NGO or the government kicking me in the nuts. I'm still getting kicked in the nuts.
I wish he would have called it a free kick.
The free kick, yeah. I like that little thing because it is like an example. And here's how the Department of Education and the university system has messed us up. You know what? I'm going to preemptively refresh this one because I got a feeling about it.
The universities are funded by four primary sources of federal funding. The big one is the federal student loan program, which is, in the many trillions of dollars at this point and only spiraling, way faster than inflation. That's number one. Number two is federal research funding, which is also very large. And you probably know that when a scientist at the university gets a research grant, the university rakes as much as 70% of the money for central uses.
Yeah.
Number three is tax exemption at the operating level, which is based on the idea that these are nonprofit institutions as opposed to, let's say, political institutions. And then number four is tax exemptions at the endowment level, which is the financial buffer that these places have. Anybody who's been close to a university budget will basically see that what would happen if you withdrew those sources of federal taxpayer money, and then for the state schools, the state money, they all instantly go bankrupt. And then you could rebuild. Because the problem right now, like the folks at University of Austin are like mounting a very valiant effort, and I hope that they succeed, and I'm cheering for them. But the problem is you're now inserting. Suppose you and I want to start a new university, and we want to hire all the free thinking professors, and we want to have the place that fixes all this. Practically speaking, we can't do it because we can't get access to that money. I'll give you the most direct reason we can't get access to that money. We can't get access to federal student funding. Do you know how universities are accredited for the purpose of getting access to federal student funding, federal student loans? They're accredited by the government, but not directly, indirectly. They're not accredited by the Department of Education. Instead, what happens is the Department of Education accredits accreditation bureaus that are nonprofits that do the accreditation. Guess what the composition of the accreditation bureaus is? The existing universities. They are in complete control. The incumbents are in complete control as to who gets access to federal student loan money. Guess how enthusiastic they are about accrediting a new university. Right. And so we have a government funded and supported cartel that has gone, it's just obvious now, it's just gone like sideways in basically any possible way it could go sideways, including, literally, as you know, students getting beaten up on campus for being, of the wrong religion. It's just, they're just wrong in every possible way at this point. And it's all in the federal taxpayer back. And there is no way, my opinion, there is no way to fix these things without replacing them. And there's no way to replace them without letting them fail. And by the way, it's like everything else in life. In a sense, this is like the most obvious conclusion of all time, which is what happens in the business world when a company does a bad job is they go bankrupt and another company takes its place, right? And that's how you get progress. And of course, below that is what happens is this is the process of evolution, right? Why does anything ever get better? It's because things are tested and tried, and then the things that are good survive. And so these places have cut themselves off. They've been allowed to cut themselves off from evolution at the institutional level and evolution at the individual level, as shown by the just widespread abuse of tenure. And so we've just stalled out. We built an ossified system, an ossified, centralized, corrupt system. We're surprised by the results. They are not fixable in their current form.
What do you think about that?
I didn't realize that the accreditation was, self-served.
So in my little journey as a peasant, I actually was a part of a university that was trying to get accredited.
Well, it makes sense. It makes sense what he's saying because, how many new universities have you seen open up in the last 50 years?
Not very many.
Yeah.
Some online ones, which are usually extensions of campuses that existed, which is what we tried to do. We tried to buy an existing university that was accredited, that was losing its accreditation because of various reasons, mostly financial, and just not enough enrollment because they were a little niche community college that was just didn't have enough enrollment. It wasn't a draw, right? It was just a school. Mm-hmm. And so we were going to make it more niche-y and a little real estate and business oriented. And it was a great plan and brought in a lot of the right people to sit on the boards, and they couldn't get their accreditation in the end. They had a public offering and everything. And it boiled down to this. It's that they didn't want to let anybody else new into the club. It didn't boil down to anything other than that. All the boxes were checked and everything, and it just didn't work out. And now that I see this, I'm like, oh, I see, because the people that were involved, while they were competent, they weren't in on the graft. Because the guy who was kind of leading the thing was just pure business. He wasn't in this world. It wasn't in the world of getting your money from the top and coming down. He had a business plan to fix a university, but they wouldn't even let it happen. They've detached themselves from the natural market forces, which he describes as evolution. You test something, what doesn't work gets abandoned, what works stays. If something fails completely, it goes bankrupt, it dies, it gets eliminated, and something new comes in its place that's better. They've stopped that process, which is why it's just broken. It's evolved to the end of its life, and now the only way to fix it is to truly let it fail. That's across the board. Department of Education, EPA, all these different agencies. Ideally, the only way that we can get rid of them is to completely let them fail. But then what do you do in the interim process, the chaos, the transition? There's no guarantee that you get to the other side and remain a whole society. And so that's what this is precarious, Ron. This is very precarious. But the hypernormalization, go back a couple episodes, the hypernormalization has made us see everything breaking and decaying and falling apart around us, but yet we don't want it to be falling apart around us because we know the consequences if it truly did. Because we can see what's happening in inner cities where it's starting to really fall apart. We can see what happened in other countries when it fell apart. We don't want to walk into that future, so somehow we have to make a transition. But he's right. We have to go bankrupt. So how do we do it? Everybody can see the reality, but a lot of people who are invested in it don't want you looking into it. Why wouldn't they want you looking into it? Okay.
I don't know.
Because there's consequences, just like here. This is Kat Timpf on Gutfeld. She makes a great analogy as to kind of what this whole USAID thing and digging into the government and actually finding out what's under the hood. She makes a great analogy. And tell me if this is not the exact reaction from the Democrats right now.
Look, it's one. I think it'd be one thing to maybe criticize Elon Musk or criticize Doge, but to only do that and criticize the way in which maybe Elon talks about the fraud or uncovers the fraud and the waste, and not the waste and fraud itself, reminds me of the guy where if you confront him about you're cheating on me, here's the evidence, and he goes, you went through my phone. How am I supposed to be with you if you can't trust me?
That is so true.
Like, the reaction to it becomes the conversation.
Right.
Like, can we not talk about what was found?
Yeah.
Apparently not. It's the exact same thing, because you think if you find to have some issues with the weight, but there's no mention from some of these people about what was found, which should bother you.
That's a great analogy. I'm going to steal that.
That's really good. That's really
You went through my phone? How can we be together if I can't trust you? And the woman's like, that's exactly what I'm saying. Yeah. Hey, maybe we're in a toxic relationship. Yeah.
that I can't get out of.
You can't look at USAID. We need that. Why? Why are we doing Pakistani studies? And why is 40% of Somalia's budget us? We've got goals. Well, can we talk about the waste, fraud, and abuse? Didn't we agree last year that waste, fraud, and abuse was bad? Well, yeah, but not if we don't trust each other.
I can't.
I thought you were waste, frauding, and abusing. I thought you were not paying your taxes fair share, It's like, geez, Louise. But think about it. It's the exact same situation. Oh, hey, we've got a budget problem. We got to tax the rich. Hey, we got to audit everybody. Hey, we need more IRS agents. Hey, where are you spending all this money I'm giving you? Right? What are you doing with it? And when we look, hey, if you don't trust what I'm doing with the money, I don't know. I feel like there's been some financial infidelity, government. We asked for clean water. We didn't say stop grandma from developing because she has a wetland and you label it navigable waterway. You know what I mean? Like, sorry, I didn't realize the Coast Guard was guarding my marsh. That's where we're at, folks. This is Scott Bessent. Again, we're kind of running through these because, A, we had an extra day that we didn't get a show, but also because there's just so much good stuff going on right now. So listen to Scott Bessent talking about Doge, and he's quelling a lot of the concerns for the American people, and he has a lot of gravitas inside of the financial world. Do you know Scott Bessent's kind of resume at all?
Not really.
Okay, so Scott Bessent, he's an openly gay man. He's married. He's got like 2 kids. He used to work for George Soros. Yeah, he was part of George Soros's management back in the day before George Soros got way too politically involved. But he was, he's a multi-billionaire. Basically was like the right hand for George Soros and on his investment arm. So he knows that world. Like he's, you know what I mean? Like he's in those associates, and obviously he's clearly very MAGA because again, MAGA is that 80%. It's all the stuff that's just common sense. natural law, capitalism, all these things that are A equals A, 2 + 2 = 4. These are just like laws of nature, and we've got to get in line with it. The university system is broken because it doesn't evolve. It doesn't react to market forces, right? It's broken. And so what's the solution? More competition. Why is tuition so high? Because there's too many, there's not enough schools. Well, why can't we get more schools? Whoa. We're protecting a monopoly system. Even though we all have different names, at the end of the day, you start realizing where does all the names connect, right? Every dean is connected to another dean, is connected to another dean. Pretty soon you find they're all related to like 100 people that are in certain positions in government. You're like,
yeah,
what?
But it's cool because we're all accredited.
Yeah, we're accredited.
Don't worry.
Yeah, we're vetted. Yep. So this is Scott Bessent talking about how things are changing and the direction they're taking us and what Doge is actually accomplishing.
Sarah, what I like to emphasize, I emphasized it yesterday to the business leaders. I want to emphasize it to your viewers. But let's remember the E in Doge is efficiency. It's not elimination. It's not extinction. We are trying to make the government do better for the American people and right size it. And I don't think that there is anyone who is happy with the bundle of services that they get from the federal government. So you're sitting in Singapore. I met with some leaders from Singapore yesterday, and Singaporeans love their government. They think that it does good things for them, and they spend about 18% of GDP on their government. If we were to balance the budget, we'd be at 18% of GDP. So why can't we have the government do a better job for the American people at a better price? Sarah, what I like to emphasize...
Is that controversial by any means? Well, nobody is happy with the bundle of services we've got. Sync's not happy, right? The left's not happy. The right's not happy. Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump talked about all the same problems. Their solutions might be different, but the problems were the same.
What was shocking to me in that little clip was that the U.S. and Singapore are making the same profit.
Well, no, Singapore is collecting 18% in GDP in taxes revenue.
Okay.
And 17 to 18%. There's like this magical, there's all kinds of studies. If you raise taxes, then there's a whole industry of how to get out on loopholes or just not, like people will not part with more than 17 to 20% of their money to the government. So you can raise the tax rate all you want. Then there's an industry on tax avoidance. If you lower the tax rate enough, then you're still going to end up at 17%.
So we're collecting the same amount in a percentage basis as Singapore.
Every time. So that's the thing. You go through all the tax modifications that the U.S. has done, you always end up at 17 to 20% of GDP. That's the spot that's tolerable by the peasant to pay to their government for their bundle of services.
So that's not necessarily a U.S. thing or a Singapore thing. That's most likely across the board thing.
That's an across the board thing. Okay. Those 17%, that's the things we can't do for ourselves.
Okay.
Right. Anything more than that, and it starts being excessive. America's in a situation because we're the reserve currency, we can print money. We can borrow it from ourselves. We don't have to borrow it from another government or another rich something. And so that's why we spend more than 17%. Every other country has to spend what they bring in.
Yeah.
Right. So that's where we're a little bit different. He's saying we got to stop doing that. So if we balance the budget, every other country can pull off whatever services they provide at 17%. And there are some great examples of it, like he's mentioning Singapore.
Okay.
Nobody disagrees with that, right? We need to fix what's broken. Great. We can have some argument about what to fix, but if you're going to bake into corruption, then you're not part of the conversation. If you're going to bake corruption into what we're recreating, then you're not going to be part of this conversation. Right. Because that's, you went through my phone. Hold on. All right. So this is also Scott Bessent talking about things. Well, his lips are moving.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Is it you?
Yeah, it was me.
Okay. Scott Bessent.
On the other side of the wall, I never really liked the term fake news. Now that I am on the inside and I can see what they're reporting, I think the term fake news probably isn't strong enough. It's really not. That they start with an a priori, they've written the story, and then they just kind of shape shift facts to back into it, because Many of the stories that I've been involved with are just so far off, so far off. There was a story in the New York Times the other day that talked about 50% headcount decreases at the IRS. Nobody's talking about that. These were on background. These were not named sources. And they're just trying to stir tumult during taxpayer filing season. I mean, it's crazy. When I was on the other side of the wall, I never really
just seen this. I mean, is he just understanding this now? Why is he not able to understand this before? I mean, we were talking about this for years.
This is why we have this show. Okay, because we the peasants, we got to live here. Like, I got to do something tomorrow to feed my family.
I know, but this is his industry.
But this is why we do the show. Let me get there.
Okay.
One of the things we have a couple catchphrases that we say all the time. We're only as good as the information we get, right? Just because you're a billionaire doesn't mean you're getting good information.
I guess, yeah.
Because you only can see what you can see. You only know what you can know. So when someone else has to tell you, it's by nature hearsay. Which is why when you're a journalist, you want to cite the source so you can go to firsthand, so then you don't have hearsay. So when he's saying here is it's not just fake news. Fake news is like too cutesy time. When he was outside of government, over time he realized, oh, the news is fake, as in it's not telling me the whole truth. Now he's sitting here saying, no, it's not just not telling you the whole truth. It's crafting a lie.
Well, we could play clip after clip of, scads and scads of stories that were all coordinated during COVID.
Oh, yeah. And here's the thing. Even with what he's saying, we talked about the IRS being reduced 50%. So up until this moment that I saw this clip from Scott Bessent himself, we reported to you, the peasant listening, that the IRS was being cut 50%.
Yeah.
So I'm only as good as that information. So that's why we constantly stay watching this and in the narrative, because if I just go on saying, oh, they cut the IRS by 50%, I like that, but it didn't happen. So what is the New York Times doing? Oh, they're fear mongering, but they also, you see them, they're splitting all these issues. You either land on the side that you're afraid or you land on the side that it's good. So don't change what's happening. And if the IRS isn't being cut in 50%, well, get to it, Scott. Right? But this is a great example. It's tell-lie-vision.
Yeah.
The English language is fantastic. But it's also very complicated because it's an amalgamation of a couple other languages: Latin, German, French, and then whatever Gaelic Old English, right?
That's why it's really easy to have a lot of wordplay.
It's have a lot of wordplay, and there's so many words in our language that mean two things but are totally different. An easy example is spirit and ghost. What's the difference between a spirit and a ghost?
Well, you can't see them. They both scare me.
Well, what's the difference?
I don't know.
Okay, so if I'm German and I say Holy Spirit, I say ghost, Holy Ghost, Gast. If I say, oh, that ghost scared me, I say that ghost scared me. But it's ghost to ghost, because a ghost and a spirit are the same thing. In English, we think ghost, Halloween, scary, spirit, good, spiritual, but really it's the same thing. If I go to French, it's espirito, all the Latin languages. Espirito. What are you for Christmas? I'm an espirito, right? I'm a ghost. I'm a spirit. All right. What do you good spirits, bad spirits? You just describe it as good or bad. You don't just say ghost or spirit. We've added in we don't have to say good ghost, bad ghost, but we say Holy Ghost because we don't want to, Holy Ghost with Halloween.
A really good ghost.
But it could also be Holy Spirit. It would mean the same thing. Do you see what I'm saying? It's English versus the French. So we have two words for the exact same thing, ghost and spirit.
Okay.
And that happens over and over and over again. And so the English language is spell casting. So when words, you can look at words and they have real meaning, like television, tell-lie-vision.
I love it when you do that. You sound so much like Alex Jones.
Some things are just right in our face. What's on TV is a good chance it's an act. Okay.
Yeah.
Fake news isn't enough. But like you said, he's just realizing this. Listen, Jeff Bezos probably did think Trump was doing something with Russia, because his reporters that he hired to tell him what was going on out in the world
at the news station that he owns
at Washington Post. Yeah, exactly. Jeez. Like, and then when he sees what's really happening, he's like, hey, we're not going to report on that. We're going to, you know what I mean? And they're upset because they're committed to the narrative. They're team players at this point. And we found, because why? Because USAID's paying them. It goes back to they're all in the NGO. Go kick that small business and kick that taxpayer in the boop, right? That's their job, to kick you in the boop. Fake news isn't enough. So we're going to keep doing this. We are often wrong, but never in doubt. We were clearly wrong that they were dumping the IRS by 50%, but we had no doubt till now. And now we know. That's why we do this.
All right.
I do think that the truth is out there. We just have to stay on it. Keep watching. Okay. Another thing, the election still coming up. The 2020 election, we're not done with it. When Trump getting rid of those pardons and waiving them and saying they'll be investigated, that's pretty amazing. Tina Peters. Oh, before we go too far, I went back to the COVID letter where they knew about COVID, and there was a name on there. I said, does anybody recognize the name? The name was Sir Richard Dearlove. Sir Richard Dearlove was involved in the Russia hoax in being one of the sources and kind of covering up for the Russian dossier. He was involved in all of that. So again, now he's telling the truth about what happened with COVID, but he's not telling the truth to the world. He was one of the ones who knew the truth about the dossier as well, but didn't tell the truth to the world. Again, that's his MO. He's an intelligence guy. He's never going to tell you the truth, right? Here's the truth. Now go bury it with a body of lies. That's his job.
Some of this stuff just makes me shake my head.
It's a small club and you ain't in it.
Yeah.
The great Dan Carlin. All right, 2020 election. So this is what it says here. It says, let me get this straight. Tina Peters in Colorado. She was an election official. Okay, from Mesa County, Colorado, who is rotting in prison. She got a 9-year sentence for preserving the fingerprint, the DNA, the blood type of how Dominion voting machines got to the totals of the 2020 election, is in declining health and suffering unimaginable abuse in prison. She's in her 70s. She's in prison in Colorado. These are state charges, which is why the president can't pardon her. Because there's a lot of calls for help. The Department of Justice has sent a letter to Colorado saying, advising them that they're investigating Tina Peters' political prosecution. Meanwhile, so while she's sitting in prison, the executive director of the Wisconsin Election Commission, who Xeroxed 64,000 mail-in ballots in the back conference room of Milwaukee City Hall, room 501, for the November 3rd, 2020 election, delivering just the margin needed at 3 a.m., all in favor of Joe Biden, is walking free. Quis Waddell Vog. I would just say as a reminder that it is a felony. It is voter fraud to abuse the system. Okay, so let's listen to the breakdown of this.
Government employee has been fired from her government job for helping to rig the 2020
This is up in Wisconsin. So she's been fired. Like, this is confirmed, what I just read.
2020 presidential election in Joe Biden's favor. Here's what the official report is saying. She printed 64,000 ballots in the back conference room of City Hall, room 501, for the November 3rd, 2020 election. She had city employees and others at the CTCL fill out ballots on the 4th, 6th, and other floors of City Hall. Then kicked out observers around 10 to 10:30 p.m. on November 3rd. Then brought in large amounts of ballots at 1:15 a.m. on November 4th. All illegal, unconstitutional. Number one way, however, the liberals stole the presidential election in 2024. Now, listen to this. We have a documented email from one of her coworkers by the name of Ryan Chu. He wrote on November 4th at 4:07 a.m., "Damn, Claire, you have a flair for drama, delivering just the margin needed at 3 a.m. I bet you had those votes counted at midnight and just wanted to keep the world waiting." Now, remember, up in Wisconsin, President Biden was winning. And then all of a sudden, in the middle of the night, Joe Biden came out ahead like a firework.
Trump was winning, not Biden.
Just shot up.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, he's declared the winner. Now, this woman has been fired. Obviously, this needs to be reported in greater detail. But this could be how Biden had more ballots than Donald Trump. Not more votes, but more ballots. 64,000 extra ballots
How's that different from votes? I'm not understanding that distinction he's making there.
I'm a voter.
Sure.
This is a ballot. This is also a ballot.
Okay, I got it. Okay.
You have 2 ballots. I'm 1 voter.
Right.
You have the voters elected Donald Trump. He lost the ballot count. Okay. Now, I've wanted to read this for a while. This is from the book called Justice Denied: The United States versus the People, and it's by Howard Waltz. And you just have to read the book. His story matters. But I want to jump to something that he wrote in this book while he was incarcerated, and he wrote he was talking to his mom. Okay. So he's going through his appeals and stuff like that, and he's absolutely innocent, and he maintains his innocence. And based on what I read in the book and the documentation he provides, it looks like he is innocent. Okay. And so he's deep into his sentence, and he's working through the appeals, and he goes, by the time I filed appeals of my conviction from both the District Court of the Southern District of West Virginia, where I originally filed a habeas petition, filed multiple appeals to the Western District of North Carolina, and filed through the Fourth Circuit of Appeals to the Supreme Court on 4 separate occasions. So he's working through the system, his, again, procedural issues as well as his raw innocence. I provided Supreme Court on 4 separate occasions. I proved actual innocence as far back as 2009, but gave up on that issue after Chief Justice John Roberts' decision in District Attorney's Office for the 3rd Judicial District et al. Versus Osborne that same year. He ruled, quote, actual innocence, quote, was not a reason for relief. I told my mother about this ruling before she died. She very politely said she did not believe me. I want you to think about this, because I've shown this passage to a few people and they have the same reaction. If you're completely innocent of a crime and you can prove it, that should be enough to overturn a conviction, or like, that's the point, right?
Yeah. To any sane, rational person, why wouldn't it be?
Why wouldn't it be? She very politely said she did not believe me. She claimed such a ruling could never be made in the United States of America. We say this phrase, we project our goodness onto our government because we created it. Out of good intention, we created it. With all these safeguards, innocence is assumed. Guilt must be proven beyond a shadow of a doubt, right? If guilt is questioned beyond a shadow of a doubt, then we revert to innocence.
Right.
Okay. That's how we believe we set it up. That's the mentality we bring and we project onto our government. But he says, no, innocence is not reason for relief. I told my mother about the ruling before she died. She very politely said she did not believe me. How many of you would say the same thing? She claimed such a ruling could never be made in the United States of America. So I sent her a copy of it. She was right in that it was unbelievable that such a decision could be made in this nation, but it was also true that our Supreme Court made it. Quote, this is from the decision, written by Chief Justice John Roberts. Osborne, the appellate, has obliquely relies on an asserted federal constitutional right to be released upon proof of actual innocence. Whether such a federal right exists is an open question. We have struggled with it over the years, in some cases assuming arguendo, so that's just assuming it for the case of arguing, debate, that it exists, while also noting the difficult questions such a right would pose and the high standard any claimant would have to meet.
Huh. And that's one of our justices.
Yep. So your innocence doesn't matter. We've argued about it before, if it's relevant, but really,
it's a tough question.
It's a tough question. Now, I know a little more about our federal system. It's all contractually based. So innocence, the facts are on the moon. It doesn't matter what happened. You have a bill to pay, and it's a contractual process to get you to agree to pay that bill is what it is. And so your innocence doesn't factor into it. You just need to settle the charge, settle the bill. And if leading up to the final settlement, you can prove innocence, then you might get released or discharged early, dismissed, whatever the case is. But if you get that conviction and it's all finalized, you get the final judgment, that they're saying is the implication is it's too hard to unwind. Okay, it's too hard to unwind. So your innocence doesn't matter. And this happens all the time. I'll give you a really good example in the patriot community. You've got the Whitmer kidnapping plot, right? Where you had 18 people involved and like 12 of them were, or 10 of them were government agents.
Yeah.
Right. I think if I remember correctly, I think there were like a total of 10. 2 of them took plea deals early. 4 of them went to trial and were completely acquitted. And then 4 more went to trial and 2 were acquitted. And then I think 2 were retried and then they were acquitted. Anyways, only 2 of them are sitting in prison. The ones who took the plea deal. They're innocent. The other guy's trials proved they're innocent. They were entrapped. They were set up. The other guys were acquitted. Everything pointed that direction. Everything applied. Those guys are totally innocent, yet they're still sitting in prison because innocence wasn't enough reason to get them up. In the federal system, there's all types of people that are in prison for murder, convicted. And then later, someone else comes out, confesses, DNA evidence proves that that person gets convicted, goes to prison. Now you have two people sitting in prison for the same murder. One is completely innocent, but it takes appeals and sometimes years to procedurally get that guy out because they have to undo all the paperwork.
Got it.
Donald Trump bypasses that with a pardon. That's why the pardon power exists, is because sometimes innocence does matter, and the system is built in such a way that it doesn't.
But he can't help this chick out because it's a state case.
Because it's a state case.
Right.
Exactly. Again, the fact that she's innocent and that we can all see that, how do you get past the judge's statements? How do you get past the things put on the record? Everybody in court is lying. People think that in court that the two sides don't lie. That's not the truth. They both lie. And then the truth is a byproduct of that. By seeing what both perspective is, you get to pick and choose how you see it as a juror. Okay. But they're both lying. Truth is not, it's a byproduct, not the objective. Okay. So support Tina Peters, support what they're doing there. Donald Trump is really on a warpath because a warpath? I don't know. I'm being a little reserved. Someone said I'm holding back a little. Maybe I'm a little traumatized from where the hyperbole can get you. But really, Donald Trump is like righting the ship slowly but surely. So this clearly deals directly with me, but it's part of this overall picture because what you have to realize is you listening to this, you're me. You're just a peasant. Our lives look different, but at the end of the day, except for a few listeners, you're probably not in a position of power, right? You got to live here. You got to survive. And so when we're wrong, when one person that's in our station is wronged, we're all wronged because it could be me. And Donald Trump recognizes that. So he made things right. And now this is from a speech he gave at the Department of Justice last week. You can tell he's going into the lion's den here. This is the department that has been weaponized. And it's been weaponized since the Nixon era. Probably before that, but maybe in more isolated terms. It's been weaponized, and he's trying to turn that around.
That's why on day one, I signed an executive order banning all government censorship and directing the removal of every bureaucrat who conspired to attack free speech and many other things and values in America.
This is still coming. Not every bureaucrat that conspired to eliminate your right to free speech has been fired. This is clearly an ongoing figuring out who was involved, and it's in every department. It doesn't matter if the Department of Education, EPA, NIH, DOJ, FBI, that executive order applies to everybody. As they find people who conspired against your right to free speech, they're to be eliminated.
I'm nervous that they're going to find so many people that they're going to have a hard time putting it all back together.
I don't think so.
No?
I think most government workers have no interaction with the media, no interaction with Facebook, right? This is done at a top level.
Okay.
This is done at a point of contact
level.
So
this is a select team.
I would imagine.
Okay.
Well, it's not a select team. There's thousands of people. But you're talking in an employment base of millions.
Yeah.
Right? Because most people that work for government are just a functionary. I mean, these are your neighbors, the fellow peasants that just happen to work for the government.
Even if it's thousands of people, I'm calling that a select team out of millions.
Yeah.
Stripped the security clearances of the disgraced intelligence agents who lied about Hunter Biden's laptop from hell. We revoked the clearances of deranged Jack Smith, Alvin Bragg, Letitia James, and the crooked law firms that aided their partisan persecutions. And I went through it. These are state and city courts, and the corruption is unbelievable. We also terminated the clearances of the Biden crime family and Joe Biden himself. He didn't deserve it. In fact, he was essentially found guilty, but they said he was incompetent, and therefore let's not find him guilty, I guess. Nobody knows what that ruling was, but I didn't want any part of it. I think I would have rather been found guilty than what they found with him. He said he didn't know what the hell he was doing, and therefore he's let him go. I said, I'd rather be convicted, Pam, I think, than that. That was not... I said, please convict me, don't say that. I pardoned hundreds of political prisoners who had been grossly mistreated. We removed the senior FBI officials who misdirected resources to send SWAT teams after grandmothers and J6 hostages. And it was a great honor for me to fire, I will tell you this, a great honor to fire James Comey. A great, great honor. That was nothing. There was no better day. A lot of people said, oh, that's too bad you did that. And they said that's going to be, and you know what? A year later, they said that actually saved the administration, because the level of corrupt things that we learned after that turned out to be that they were doing, in fact, really bad things. He was a terrible person, did terrible things, and persecuted people, and all in the guise of being an angel, but he wasn't an angel.
So we're going to see some indictments?
I don't know. We'll find out. I sure hope we find out. Things are progressing. It's interesting. We've been at this a while. I remember years and years and years ago, way before we even started this podcast, Trump tweeted out on Twitter, back when he had an active Twitter account the first time, he tweeted out a meme that had, prison bars, and behind it were, Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, Loretta Lynch, and James Comey, and a few other people behind bars. And he says, when do the trials for treason begin? And I have a steak dinner bet with my friend as to when the trials begin, because I thought, well, if he's tweeting that out, it's got to be right away. I've learned to be a little patient.
Yeah. Shoot. Paying for steak dinners left and right.
I'm still waiting, and I will wait. And my expectations are pretty low, but I'm starting to, after waiving all the security clearances, the pardons, there seems to be taking forward action. And you got to remember, why hasn't this been done already? Mm-hmm. Why hasn't the system already done this? Isn't this what the system's supposed to do, is like find crime and, go after it kind of thing to stop it?
Well, I got a suspicion.
Yeah, we all do. So we've had this assumption like, well, okay, the Democrats have had power, that's why they haven't. But it's not really been the case, right? It's been back and forth. Yeah. This is Steve Baker. He's a fellow J6er. He was convicted of, or I don't actually know if he was convicted, but he was charged with the misdemeanors of going in. He was at January 6th as a reporter. He walked into the Capitol, fought standing next to a New York Times reporter. New York Times reporter was never charged. He was. But he was reporting on the actual trials, walking into court, listening to the trials along with Julie Kelly for a couple years before he was indicted. Before he was indicted, so in 2023, when I was sitting for trial, I met with him in the hall of the courtroom multiple times. So I've met him, talked to him quite a bit. And he's a victim of this, but he's also reporting on it and investigating it. And this is what he has to say. This is why things haven't been done.
There's something that I've been working on for about 7 or 8 months now that is, I think, maybe the biggest story of my life. If you really want to know what happened on January 6th, you need to look up this guy, particular name, which we will reveal on Monday morning. There is a problem in the GOP. There's something they don't want to know. And one of the things that's going to happen in our investigation here, the series that we're starting on Monday, is there's going to be some names that people don't want to hear. They're going to be uncomfortable with that. I think all of us are going to be fine with what we're going to talk about, but it gets way too close to home. I asked one of the principals in the first story here, I said by name, the guy who I have not named, I said, are you afraid of him? He said, I'm terrified of him. So why? He said, well, you know his history. He's probably the most immoral person I've ever dealt with in my life. He will do anything to cover his tracks. And I said, okay, but why are you talking to me? He said, because he has to pay for what he did to all of us on January 6th.
This is something we've suspected for a long time.
I still don't know who it is, though.
Of course, we're going to find out today. So hopefully tomorrow we'll be covering that. So don't forget to tune in, folks. All right, that's it for our show today. Don't forget to go to our website, peasantsperspective.com, and, take a look around. You'll see some fun stuff. And then also don't forget to visit leftbehindandwithout.org, my wife's nonprofit dedicated to helping children of incarcerated parents. something that's really needed, please take some time to go explore that website and see some of the stuff about it. This is a real issue, and it's in your community, whether you know it or not. And then, of course, don't forget to follow us on X at Gone4 months, and at Peasants PER for Peasants Perspective on X, and you can keep up with us from there. All right, we'll talk to you guys again tomorrow. Bye.
Bye.
Who are the Britons? Well, we all are. We are all Britons, and I am your king.
Didn't know we had a king. I thought we were an autonomous collective.
You're fooling yourself. We're living in a dictatorship, a self-perpetuating autocracy in which the working classes...
Oh, there you go, bringing class into it again.
Well, that's what it's all about. If only people would...
Please,
good people, I am in haste. Who lives in that castle?
No one lives there.
Then who is your lord?
We don't have a lord.
What? I told you. We're an anarcho-syndicalist commune. We take it in turns to act as a sort of executive officer for the week.
Yes.
But all the decisions of that officer have to be ratified at a special bi-weekly meeting.
Yes, I see.
By a simple majority in the case of purely internal affairs.
Be quiet.
But by a 2/3 majority in the case of more
Be quiet. I order you to be quiet. Order? Who does he think he is?
I'm your king.
Well, I didn't vote for you.
You don't vote for kings.
Well, how'd you become king then?
The Lady of the Lake, her arm clad in the purest shimmering samite, held aloft Excalibur from the bosom of the water, signifying by divine providence that I, Arthur, was to carry Excalibur. That is why I'm your king. Listen, strange women lying in ponds distributing swords is no basis for a system of government. Supreme executive power derives from a mandate from the masses, not from some farcical aquatic ceremony. Be quiet! But you can't expect to wield supreme executive power just because some watery tart threw a sword at you. Shut up! I mean, if I went round saying I was an emperor just because some moistened bint had lobbed a scimitar at me, they'd put me away. Shut up! Will you shut up? Ah, now we see the violence inherent in the system. Shut up! Oh, come and see the violence inherent in the system! Help! Help! I'm being repressed! Bloody peasant! Oh, what a giveaway. Did you hear that? Did you hear that, eh? That's what I'm on about. Did you see him repressing me? You